Hey, good people, it's Aaron Laroy. Yes, I know I'm not Davia. I'm glad I'm not because she looks way better than me, but we still have a special guest today on Tales from the Shaker, a Davia Williams Stevenson podcast. We have none other than the founder, the creator, the originator, the lady herself, Miss Davia Williams Stevenson. Welcome to your own show.
Oh my God.
How you feel?
You know, good. It's a little odd, you know. I'm used to you behind the camera and I'm but no, it's fun. I'm just here. I'm just here to see where it goes, how we do.
I'm so elated to be a partaker in this, and I can't wait to jump in. But before we jump in, we got to read this extensive resume because you have done a lot in your life. So in case you don't know, Davia Williams Stevenson is a licensed professional clinical counselor, a life coach, speaker, entrepreneur, and now podcaster. With 12 years of experience in private clinical practice, Davia helps individuals, couples, families grow towards mental and relational health. She has been published and presents on self-care and preventing compassion fatigue and burnout. Davia is a passionate advocate for the normalization of mental health care and access, particularly for people of color. She brings her message of honest, compassionate self-assessment and strength building to women's organizations, youth groups, civic organizations, and universities. Davia holds memberships in the American Counseling Association, the Ohio Counseling Association, and the Association for Spiritual, Ethical, and Religious Values in Counseling. She also is a member of the
Delta Sigma Theta.
Okay. The Columbus chapter of the Links Incorporated, and is a sustaining member of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women right here in Central Ohio. She holds a BA in psychology from the University of Oklahoma and a master's in clinical counseling from Ashland Theological Seminary. Davia has been married to her wonderful husband, Eric, for 35 years. And is the proud mother of 2 adult sons and 2 daughters in love.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been a full life.
It's been a full life.
Yeah.
So take us on, before all these great things that you have acquired in life and, throughout your career, take us back to where it all started.
Okay, so I'm from Dayton. I was born in Dayton. My family, my mother went to Dunbar High School. So a lot of my family's from the Central Ohio area, but we left when I was a baby and moved to Jersey, South Jersey, not far from Philly, area called Willingboro. And I was there until about 9 years old, and then we moved to Oklahoma City, wondering how Oklahoma came in the mix. So from 4th or 5th grade through to college, we lived in Oklahoma. I went to University of Oklahoma, which is where I met my husband. And then after we graduated college, moved to Chicago, where I went to law school at Loyola University School of Law. And he eventually went to Northwestern, got his MBA there. Both our boys were born in Chicago City. And then back to New Jersey and back to Ohio. So I've lived in New Jersey and Ohio twice.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
So on that journey, have you always been an advocate or had the interest in just like how the mind works, the psychology of the mind? Because you say you have a law degree. What made you be interested in that particular field? Like, was there a passion as a young child that you always wanted to be a lawyer or wanted to get into the mental health space? Like, what got you on this journey to where you are now?
Yeah, so nothing linear. I can't say I had a plan and an interest and I made this move and that move and that move. That's just not how it's unfolded for me. Nothing's been linear. I will say I've always wanted to help people that I knew. Always wanted to, so I started undergraduate planning to go to medical school. So really? I took pretty much every course I needed except for the second organic chemistry lab. I was ready to take the MCAT. And it was one of those things, and I think you've heard me say in different places that, I'm a recovering people pleaser. As a kid who was a good student, and we can talk about this later if the conversation goes this way, but as one who'd been sick, it was my senior year in high school that I was diagnosed with cancer. So coming out of all of that, it certainly was well received that I was going to
So wait
consider
a
being
minute.
a doctor.
So you said your last year of
High
college,
school.
high school,
Yeah.
you were diagnosed with cancer,
Yeah. Bone cancer.
bone cancer.
Yep.
Can you that can you just kind of walk us through that journey of
Oh,
what that
man.
was like your last year in high school, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As a adolescent in a sense, or someone who in their late teens, what was that like?
I know we only tend to do 30 minutes on this show.
This is your show.
It is, but I will tell you that because I've had cancer twice. I had another episode of cancer, completely different type, 20 years after that. I will say I felt a sense of purpose during that whole thing. I felt like God told me that I needed to walk through it with courage and with grace. I'd hoped that it would help to heal my family. My parents had a really difficult marriage. I assumed I was going to die. Osteosarcoma is still a very deadly cancer. One of the reasons it's so deadly, it strikes young people, usually around 13 to early 20s, in your large bones. Mine was in my left leg. And the only symptom is pain. So if you're a kid who's used to being active, I mean, I started getting this pain. I kept trying to work it out. I ran track. I would go roller skate. I would just do things to try to work out this pain. There's another little aspect to the story that I didn't used to share very widely because I wasn't sure how people would receive it. And now I don't worry about that so much anymore. It's my story. And I think God used this. But when I was 10 or 12 years old, somewhere in that space, I saw a movie, and it was called Death Be Not Proud. It was written by a father based on a poem called Death Be Not Proud. And a movie had been made starring, oh my gosh, what's his name? Robbie Benson was a big teen actor during that time. Some of y'all may know him as the voice of the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, the Disney movie. But it was about a young man who was diagnosed with brain cancer. And he lived in New England or somewhere. I think went to like a boarding school or something. But how he walked through that journey to death. He did die with grace and with dignity. And his parents' marriage did heal for some period of time. And it just was a tribute to the way he went through that battle. Well, I saw that movie, and I remembered thinking, that's going to be me. I just remember that thought and then tried to sort of dismiss it. Well, as I started having increasing pain, I remember one of my friends saying, you should go to the doctor. You probably have gout. We were thinking of different, maybe it's bone spurs, maybe it's what have you. But the pain started getting pretty intense. And I remember I came home from school one day. And our house is what you call a raised ranch. So you could come in from like where the garage carport area was, and you have to go upstairs to the main floor. And coming up the stairs, my mom watched me just really struggling to come up the stairs. So she called a doctor that we knew, and he told her to take me to the Oklahoma City clinic and don't get an appointment, just go get an x-ray, and you could see it plain as day, about the size of a plum, a tumor in my bone, lower thigh. So we move through that whole process. We get biopsies and find out that it's cancer. I remember it was homecoming weekend for my high school senior year, big deal. And it comes back as malignant. And that night, after my mom went home and lots of kids from the high school came out because it had been homecoming and I was in the hospital, and so lots of people came to visit me. After everybody was gone, about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't sleep. I turned on the TV. Guess what movie comes on?
That movie.
Death Be Not Proud.
Wow.
And I just knew. It was confirmation. I'm like, I'm going to die, but I have a purpose in this. And I just felt so purposed. At that time, I grew up going to church and everything. I didn't really have a real defined understanding of God's word or work in my life, but I just knew that this was what that was. And so, yeah, when you asked me how I felt, scared and sad and all that stuff, but really purposed. Really purposed. And I had to revision when I lived through it. Because it's like, oh, wow, I get to live through this.
It sounds like, because most people, when they get news, something like that, something as catastrophic as that, like, I don't think the first reaction is, oh, this is purpose. How did you navigate, again, leaving high school and then going to college. How did you find purpose in that? Because again, senior year, during prom, and then you're transitioning to a whole new life in college. How did you find purpose in a very tragic situation?
I gotta tell you, because everything about it was so unusual and so big. So I skipped the whole chunk. So so the diagnosis came on Friday. The plan was I would start chemotherapy. They were bringing in a special oncologist, start chemotherapy on Monday and have my leg amputated on Friday. That's the
Wow.
still very much the norm for the treatment of osteosarcoma is to amputate the limb. Because it spreads so rapidly. The reason why it's so deadly is there's no symptom until you have pain, and usually by the time you have pain, it's already spread to your lungs or somewhere else. Mine had not done that, praise God.
Praise God.
So chemo was supposed to start Monday, leg amputated on Thursday. Monday, my parents and I are in the hospital waiting, and the oncologist never shows up. We don't know why, just never shows up. Monday night, my dad has dinner with his boss who came in from New York, and they're just at a kind of a locals restaurant, not a fancy restaurant. They leave the restaurant and a woman stops them. This is where it gets crazy, but everyone knows this story that knows me. And this woman kind of stops the car before they pull out, and she says, "Excuse me, sir, for eavesdropping." I remember the quote because this was my dad's quote, and the words weren't the norm. "Excuse me, sir, for eavesdropping, but I was sitting at a table adjacent to yours, and I heard what you said about your daughter. And there's an article in the current Reader's Digest about a doctor who's discovered a cure for her type of cancer."
Wow.
I actually have that article right in my office here. So if there's a moment to break, I can grab it. But so my dad, remember, this is early 80s. This is before cell phones and all that kind of stuff. So dad stops at like a 7-Eleven to look for it. It's not there. He goes home, tells my mom about it. She gets on the phone. She must be a subscriber. You know, subscribers get the issue a little earlier. This is third week or so of October. Maybe it's the November issue, blah, blah, blah. Can't find anything. So next day, my mom comes to the hospital really early to try to be there when the doctors do their rounds, because surely I'm going to start chemo this day. I'm supposed to start the day before. I'm getting amputated on Thursday. Surely they want to kill some of these cancer cells. So she comes in early and she's waiting. My dad, on his way in, stops at the hospital gift shop, tells a woman what he's looking for. She says, "I think we got a delivery last night. Let me look." And there was. And she sold him one before it was even put on display. I don't know how this person had seen it, but whatever person. But anyway, by the time my dad comes up to my room, he is called the Mercy Catholic Medical Center in Philadelphia, which is where this doctor, Isaac Gerasi, was in the article, had come across a cure for osteosarcoma while researching a cure for leukemia. He's got his whole story that was amazing. His family escaped the Holocaust to Bulgaria. Just really interesting story. But by the time my dad came up to the room, he had plane tickets. He had talked to Dr. Gerasi, and we left the next day. Wow. The oncologist never came.
Wow.
We don't know what happened. He didn't get the message. We don't know. We still don't know. And so my family, they packed me up, and we go to Philly, the Philly area, Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, to this hospital where I'm treated. My oncologist is the doctor who we say discovered the cure. It's not, people still die from this disease. But I'm trying not to get caught in the weeds on this one, but a very common drug that's used now at that time, this is now almost 40 years ago, was pretty lethal methotrexate. He could give it in very high doses. Usually methotrexate is given in very, very tiny doses because it's so toxic. And he developed a rescue. We call it the leucovorin rescue. And I remember it. I remember I'd get the methotrexate, and then they'd hang this next IV that came in like this brown bottle, and it literally rescued you from the death that dose of methotrexate would cause. So even that, like everything about it was so big. You know, people left high school and showed up at the airport to say goodbye. News stations were there. So you said what helped me to see purpose? I think it was all of this there was so much hoopla around my whole thing that it helped me to stay on task, I think. I think had it just been quietly, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That was the story that I had. So there were just always things like that kept me feeling like, okay, people are watching that you need to encourage. People are watching.
And it sounded like you had a good support system. Your family was with you the whole step of the way.
They couldn't be there. Everybody couldn't leave and go. Like I was away from home from October to April for the most part. My mom, one of my parents was always with me, if not both of them. I remember Thanksgiving, and my birthday's right after Thanksgiving. My dad bringing my sisters up. I would get lots of mail from school and friends. And one of my best friends, I used to work at a clothing store, and I'd put in a big layaway. And she and some other people got the layaway out and sent it to me for my birthday, saying, we're going to see you wear these clothes. Yeah.
Wow.
That was big. Hopeful statement.
And you persevered through college, through all the adversities.
Yeah, I started college. I was still getting chemo when I started college. Yeah.
And you graduated.
I graduated.
And then what was next right after that? What happened next?
Law school.
Law school.
Engagement and then law school.
So you got engaged?
Got engaged. So Eric and I started dating freshman year.
Freshman year. And was that how was that? Like, was he uncomfortable knowing your situation? Was that a tough during that time for him?
I don't know, because I was never sickly. It's kind of interesting. I was always strong. I was active. I was in student organizations. Unless I told you,
no one
you
knew.
didn't really know.
Didn't know.
Which I told people because it was a pretty well-known story. But yeah, I mean, though I was bald, I wore good wigs, and my hair looked like my sister's, so no one would think anything about that, you know. I certainly, he knew. I shared that with him, of course. And I remember asking him one time, do you want to see my head? He's like, yeah, I'm okay. He didn't, he didn't need to. I trust you. It's all good. but he did. And, he was nothing but affirming.
Wow.
Yeah, he helped me come out of my wig when I came back sophomore year.
Wow.
My hair would grow back in between start to grow back. And yeah, I remember he was like my hype man. You got to see Davia's haircut. Like she's, because I looked different coming back after 6 months without chemo. I'd picked up weight, my hair was now short, and I really looked like more me than, but yeah, that was a special time. And that's when I knew he was special too.
So you guys get engaged after college. You go on to law school.
I move ahead to Chicago.
Law school.
Yeah, start law school. Yeah,
and then take us through that process, that journey. So what was after that? After the law school, you guys are engaged now.
Yep, we get married. Christmas break, my first year in law school.
So y'all were married young.
Yeah, right out of college.
So explain that, because a lot of people nowadays marriage is kind of like people. From what I read, people are waiting a little bit longer to get married, but you all were married young. Like, how was that? What would you say to young people who want to get married early? Because you did it, and you all are still married.
We are. I don't know that we would advise it. Seriously, I think if he were sitting here with me, he would say, I think we dated all through college. And it was kind of what we do now. We knew we wanted to be together, but it's like, you're going to Chicago, and like, do we get married or do we break up? It was kind of like the next thing to do. And in the middle of that, we both come to faith.
Yes.
And we did our relationship very differently after we'd come to faith. And I think we wanted to get married for the benefits of marriage. and then I got, pretty early on, found myself expecting my older son.
Nice.
So again, there's always starts and stops and, and twists and turns. And I wouldn't change any of it. Nothing. There's not much of my life that's gone as planned. And oftentimes the benefit I see in retrospect, of not having my plans work out like I want. But like, I can't imagine a world if Tyler weren't here. he was supposed to be born.
He was supposed to be born.
And so this was his turn. That's when his time was up. His egg was up or whatever. You know, it was like he needed to be here. So, and I think that gave real focus to our life too. You know, like anybody that's been married a long time. I mean, I adore my husband. You know, but there have been times when I couldn't stand my husband. And I would imagine it's possible that he could have had moments like that with me. But you know, we say jokingly, people are like, what's the secret to a long marriage? And jokingly, we would say nobody wanted to quit at the same time. But that's kind of true. There's truth to that. We joke about it, but there's truth to that. There's always one of us to hold the other down. But for us also just our faith paradigm. The promise wasn't just to him.
Wow.
It was to God before others. And so we know that our marriage serves a purpose outside of ourselves. And we can usually get back to that space.
What do you feel like in that moment when you said marriage serves a purpose? Like, what do you feel like is one of the biggest things you learned in marriage, like that has served a purpose for you?
I think, gosh, that's a loaded question because there's a lot of layers. So I'll say for me, just my person individually, I'll try to pick one. All right, I don't know how to give this without some kind of mental health context. So I always talk about core longings. We all are built with certain longings in our core to belong, to have purpose and significance and security and those types of things. And I think, and I always say that we all have them all, and there's one or two of those where we're vulnerable, and that's where most of our needs come from. And I would say mine, as I understand myself, as I continue to understand myself, is significance. And I think being so significant to another individual, to my children, just as I learn to make my way around the world and see where it matters that I'm here, is a big lesson I've learned in marriage. It's also a place where that significant space is where I've always had question marks as well. Given my cancer story, and my second cancer was breast cancer many years later, they say they're completely unrelated, two different types of cancers, and they're both these fantastical stories, right? People aren't supposed to be where they were, and things happen, and all of these. And I've often questioned, am I doing enough to justify all that God did to keep me here? There's a whole lot of people I know along the way that are not, and I still am.
Yes.
And that's a place I wrestle. What I love about this podcast, it may not seem like a huge deal to others, but to me, it's obedience. It is, I believe I am in the space where God has me. And I don't know where it's going to go. I didn't start it with great big expectations. A big part of that dream making is because of you, Mr. Aaron. No. It's one of your giftings. One of your companies or organization is Dreaming with Dreamers, and that is spot on part of your gifting. I've said this to you before, that I didn't know you get to do new things at this age. My mother died before this age, and my grandmother, and I didn't know people that lived beyond their 50s. And so I didn't have older women to model from, and I certainly didn't know you started stuff, especially just leaping into things you didn't know how to do. And that's characterized the last couple of my years of my life. I'm just leaning into things. I don't know how to do them. I'm not as afraid to fail. But kind of like my not freshman year, but my first cancer battle, there's just a sense of purpose in it. So I'm not so afraid of the outcome, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And
Yeah.
I love what you said because like when I first met you, like I haven't seen a lot of Black women who were in a place of prestige, influence. You don't see that a lot. And where I grew up or where others. So when I saw you, not even because of that, but because of who you are, like it was very motivational to me to see what was on the inside, for you to reach out to me and say, "Hey, I see what you're doing down when, the young man who was murdered by the
Yeah,
police,
it was George Floyd
George
and the
Floyd, and how you
protests and
reached
all.
out to me, said, "Hey, I want to, support what you're doing," and this is how the relationship connected. And I was like, "Wow, this is a woman who has overcome so much." Before I even knew all your story, the fact that you're still here. I always say, I think it was Dr. Miles Monroe who said, the fact that you're living is proof that your life is needed now.
Mm.
And I just say that your life has been needed, not then, not back then. I mean, it was back then as it is now. Like, you are significant to not just your generation, but to mine as well, because we get to glean from your wisdom, from your experiences. And those are priceless. Those are priceless things that, like you said, everyone didn't get a chance to see, but you have been able to see those things. I just want to say thank you for just showing up and being your authentic self when you couldn't, like, we didn't know nothing about a podcast, all this, like, you did it by faith. And here we are now, being like on a couch or in a chair with you, interviewing you. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, cool. What you carry, literally, it transfers to other individuals that in a way that you will never know. And it has blessed my life tremendously just by being you. You have caused me to go back and to uncover and to dig up buried dreams that I have put away by your yes, by your example, by your life, and by your experiences. And I always say, God doesn't waste experiences.
He doesn't.
And I'm just saying, I'm so grateful that you are here alive today to testify with that. So I wanted to say, leading to my next question was like, what was the moment? Because we always talk about Tales from the Shaker. What was the moment that shook you? What was the thing that shook you to get you to kind of where you are right now? Because again, you weren't doing this. This is something totally new. You had private practice that you were doing. What made you take up what you were familiar with and start something completely brand new?
It's so funny because I don't know that I have one incident. I think it was a series of things. I think I went through kind of a personal crisis a few years ago where I felt like I needed to make the choice to show up. Hence, it's called a Davia Williams Stevenson podcast. I never used my maiden name. When I first got married and I was in law school, it felt like too much to say. Yum, 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 all these V's and W's. Davia Williams Stevenson felt like too much. And, being very traditional, I just wanted my husband's last name. I'm still very proud to carry my husband's last name. But in the last few years, I had a sense of, I need to go back and pick up Davia Williams. We left her. And so let's go pick her back up and see what that girl who had some ambition, but still kind of undirected. I would bounce from here to medical school, and then I got a degree in psychology, and then I went to law school, and it's like I keep a lot of education and not as much job experience, like I just kept moving around places. And so I felt I need to pick her back up. So kind of that personal crisis, loss, a young woman who became like a daughter to me because she told me I'm her you're my mom. And I tried to resist that at first, but she lost her battle with cancer. And that loss shook me up because LaToya loved me because she wanted to. Like there was no space of obligation. I didn't even understand it. Why does this girl love me so much? And it was so pure and comprehensive. And I had to learn to give into that. And I remember her saying things to me like, I'm going to teach you how to be daughtered. Like, you have to be daughtered. And, but her loss was significant to me. And I don't know. Kids were grown and moving on. Just a need to show up. Like, it's time for you get to show up outside of your roles to everyone that you serve. Grateful to serve. Grateful to have my children and my husband. And I hope to continue to be able to serve them. But I just felt it was time. And so I took a leave of absence from clinical work and thought I was resting. I didn't know for sure I was going to start this podcast. I can't remember when we had started having conversations about it. Felt like it was the fall. Like I'd already been.
Yeah, it was maybe like almost
spring, something.
Yep.
Yeah, spring. Because I went away for a couple of months. Yeah. Yeah, and then I just did it out of a sense of, let's try this. I can talk. It seems easier than blogging for me. I'm not gonna write all the time. I don't think I'm disciplined enough for that, but I can talk. And so I didn't have any real expectations, and the way it has grown, and now kind of coming behind it to add some structure, and got to talk to lawyers now and trademark things, and and it's very cool. It's all new for me. I love all of it. I don't know. I'll do it as long as I get to, I suppose. It's a real joy to me to talk to other people and hear their stories. We just don't know who's next door.
We don't
know what people are holding. And some of it is just incredible fire for the next person, And so I like to pull that out. I think some of that's, honestly, when I found my way to counseling, it just makes sense.
Do you feel like it's another avenue without, from a clinical perspective, to sit on the couch? Because, there's a lot of things from a mental health aspect that a lot of people are battling with. Do you feel like it's another outlet for you without actually being in a traditional setting? Do you get to feel like I'm using all parts of me?
I do. I really do. I feel like I'm using my training. I'm using my life experience, kind of my natural orientations to care, give, and interest in people. I love people. It feels natural, actually. I do. I don't know if I said this to you. I was talking to someone, and I said, I feel more me than I think I've ever felt. And I'm still discovering who that is, which is really cool, right? But I feel more me.
So you say you're still discovering. So that means and I always say that I believe we all have a purpose in life, but I also feel like purpose is progressive.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you said, I'm still figuring out me.
Yeah.
Here, where you are at your age, what would you say to the individual who felt like, I missed my moment, or I'm too old, or there's no space for me. This is a young men's or a young women's game. What would you say to that individual? Because you're playing, I won't say playing this game, but you're in the game, and you do a phenomenal job. This is why I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm gonna, do this. This is like
we do what we always do. We just have a conversation,
So what would you say to that individual?
I would tell them fight through it, because I still think that at times.
Really?
Shoot, yeah.
We would never know.
I do. Yeah, I do.
We would never know.
I fight that. That's the negative voice that that I hear in my head at times. You're too old. You're too. You're not that far behind Oprah and or whatever. And I just that's big shoes. I don't mean that, but in terms of I would just say keep fighting. If you feel like there's something you want to do, if there's something you have a sense of calling for, then if I believe calls come from God, He's eternal. Frankly, so are you.
Yeah.
And so fight it, do it, lean in, find people who can help you. It's you and others. And I feel like I just really want to mention Devin, who's not working with us now, but Devin Cothran, Coco Therapy, check her out, y'all. She was a big part of getting things moving and inspiration and validating me. And so I had younger people around me. My kids have a lot of input that's really helpful. Means a lot to me that they're interested and that they believe in me. And they believe in me for things I haven't seen yet. I'm just trying to do the day that I have. Day that I have.
Wow.
So it's a wonderful time in my life. Not without challenges. There's certainly some challenges, but I just say fight those, question those negative thoughts, question them.
And even being, like you said, a wife, to your husband, was that a challenge? Because you said finding me. I never used my name. Like, why do you feel like, did you feel like you were living within the shadows of your husband at times? Was there something that you felt like you weren't receiving? Like, why now? Like, you say,
That's
like,
a great
why now?
question. And that's what I always ask. And nobody's ever asked me that. So
Oh.
thank you, Aaron. We're ready for that one. Yes and no. Yes, at times, for sure. During the years where his career started to really take off, were years I was a stay-at-home mom raising my kids. I wanted to do that. We agreed to do that. There's much joy in that space for me. But you don't see the growth in the same way you do. Like, nobody's giving me a raise or an evaluation or a promotion or anything like that, right? Those are, you find out kind of decades later, did they turn out okay? And I am grateful to say that I love the men that my sons are. You know, they're husbands now, which is like crazy. It's amazing to see, and they pick good wives. You know.
Okay, listen.
Yes, they did.
A good
They've got
wife.
some amazing women. And we have a little granddaughter now who's just adorable. But yeah, they've launched. They're going off figuring out their dreams now. I'm not left behind. It's not that, but that work, that daily work is done. And I don't know if I'm answering your question. Were there times when I felt in his shadow? Yes, there were times when I felt envious of his growth. There were. We've talked about that.
That's honest. A lot of married people don't talk about that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Does that happen a lot in marriages? You see it as a counselor?
It does. I think whenever someone has a new thing, like when someone is, so he's growing in his career, so he's got a group of people who speak the same language, who are working on the same projects, who are doing, he's growing in a space where I don't have input or understanding. Same thing happened when I went to grad school. Right? He was working solidly in his career. We had our business, and I went to school, and now I have this group of people who, and I'm in a group of caregivers. Like, come on, we're bonding emotionally. There's all this going on. Matter of fact, when I started school, and I think there needs to be more of this preparation, I really will give that to those professors at Ashland. Told us to guard your family and guard your marriages. Those of you who are married, guard them, because your spouse is isolated from this space. And that is often true. When one is taking on a new thing, even if you cheer them on, even if you support it, there's a level of, you got those people over there that I don't have anything to do with. And you can talk about a thing that I can't talk about. And so, yeah, I think that's part of the ebb and flow of marriage. I always say that's why it's a contract and a covenant, like a double lockdown, because you don't grow the same at the same time or in the same ways. And so to have room and grace for those different spaces where you're growing or not growing, or you're doing things that are wonderful or not, you've got to have room for that. And learn to navigate them.
Wow.
Because sometimes you navigate well and sometimes you don't.
Yeah. Was it, because I know, like, even within that marriage, we kind of skipped that part, but you all were able, from the entrepreneurship aspect as well. Can you even talk about that? And was that a challenge when you all dove into that space? Like, how was that working? You got two dynamic people who have their, similarities, but differences as well. How was that when you guys jumped into entrepreneurship while raising a family? Like, how was that process? What was that process like?
That was hard, because we moved from New Jersey here to do that. And one of the reasons we chose to come here, we knew that when we made this move that we wanted to move near family, we want our kids near family. So we were Wendy's franchisees. We were willing to do it in a location where we had family. So here or Dallas, or our purpose was to stay in New Jersey. But that wouldn't have been a good move for that particular business. And Ohio opened up for us, and so we came here. So my benefit, I suppose, was that I was going to be near my family. But I'd never been near my family. So even that had its adjustments in getting to know people up close, as opposed to, I see you once or twice a year at a holiday or a wedding or funeral, right? And getting a business off the grounds. He was, again, out and learning and growing, and my role in our business was the admin. That is not my strength. but it was just the two of us. We didn't have any partners, and that's how we had to divide the labor. And so when I moved here, I have kids who get on a bus and go to school, and a husband who leaves and goes and is learning this new business and charting new territory, and I'm at home on my computer. Was not my strength. It was very isolating. It takes a couple of years to make a new place your home, and I wasn't out interacting with people. It was very difficult. And then those expectations when you go into entrepreneurship, you've got your business plan and your projections, and then there's reality. You see like those things on Instagram, like Instagram picture versus reality. That's how that was. And so there were struggles early on. I understand now some of those statistics that say it takes about 5 years to succeed in an entrepreneurial adventure in a small business, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes in those first 5 years. Things will come that you don't even know to anticipate. And to survive that, within 5 years, you'll hit a lot of those issues, or you'll have learned how to pivot, how to respond. And we hit a few. And again, it was just us. And I think that was important too, that we remained just us in business. We didn't want any partners or anything. We had to lean on one another. But yeah, those first few years were difficult. So I've got the couple to try to adjust to my new role in business. My kids are off. They're doing pretty well with their adjustment. And then boom, the next cancer, breast cancer hits. So those first 5 years, we had that to deal with in the midst of our new business, new neighborhood, news, a lot of new things to be excited about, but also it was stressful. Yeah.
And you have overcome cancer twice. You have persevered through all adversities that were thrown your way. You raised 2 amazing sons. Now they're married. You have 2 daughter-in-laws. You're married to your husband for 35 years. When it seems like all odds were against you, you still survived.
I did. And I don't want to characterize my story as being all struggle. Whole lot of joy.
Right.
Whole lot of fun, a whole lot of growth, all of that, losses, lost parents, lost, friends and things like that. That's life.
Right.
But yeah, I do feel like, look what we did, look what I made. I'm now spending way too much time on Instagram, and I can quote memes and things all the time. But I'm just grateful. And I think one of the biggest elements, I think, for me that has helped me get through those spaces, I can always find a way to get back to gratitude. And so I talk about a gratitude journal. Actually, Eric and I both keep gratitude journals. And even in the toughest times, sometimes you have to force yourself to see something to be grateful for. I am grateful that I woke up. I'm grateful I had chicken for dinner. Sometimes it's that hard to find something, but to force your mind to a space of gratitude is useful and healthy, and it helps you to see outside of your circumstance. So I write down my thoughts, right? Make your thoughts things, and then I can address what I see. And then I can usually find some place. Some days are harder than others, but I can usually find a way to end up at gratitude. I think that really is, if there's a river that runs through my whole story, and I hope will take me all the way to eternity, is I choose to be grateful.
In the midst of it all.
In the
midst of it all.
Oh.
What's next?
I don't know.
That's honest.
I don't know. I've got some seeds of ambition that were dormant for a long time, so that's kind of fun. Let's see what this becomes. Why not have it be a talk show? I don't know. Why not? Let's try that. I'm doing some writing, so I hope books are to come. I don't know. I'm willing to expand into whatever territories God opens for me. But I think I'm also okay with falling back. I don't have, man, this is what freedom looks like.
I know that's right. I know that's right.
I am free. I am free to keep trying. I'm free to keep working. I'm free to, we talked about, I think one time I said, I'm free to fail at it. I'm free to succeed, right? And when I talk about this freedom, I'm talking about a freedom in here and a freedom in here.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily talking about, there's some freedom that is born by the financial success that we've been able to have in our endeavors, and we're really grateful for that. But I'm not talking about that kind of freedom. There's a whole lot of people way more successful and with wealth that we'll never see that are miserable and living in prisons in their minds, right? Much of the New Testament was written by Paul in prison. Right? So I am talking about this kind of freedom. Yeah, it's good space. Yeah, it's a good space.
Well, you are doing an amazing job, and anyone who has the pleasure of knowing you and coming into your presence is tremendously blessed. I know for me, like, I am blessed and have become a better man, a better person, a better human because of you. From our text conversation, our phone calls. The other week we were on a call talking about even our mental health spaces we're in. The fact that you show up for people. And I love the quote, or, we don't open up to be fixed. We open up to be known. Yeah. And the fact that you're willing to know every individual, you meet no stranger. And I feel like that's one of your greatest attributes, is that you could love people right where they are and bring out the best, see the future in them, inspire them, call out purpose, and provide hope. Like, you are literally a shaker. Literally, like, you are literally a shaker.
May that be so, man.
No, I don't say I like I mean that. Like, my life, I can't speak for anybody else, but my life has been radically transformed by your presence. So know that you have made a difference in my life, and I'm sure many of others. And we're just grateful for Davia Williams Stevenson. You are the blessing, who you are, your being. Not what you do, but exactly for who you are is the blessing. And we cherish that.
Thank you. Almost made it, man.
You did. I wasn't even trying to make you cry.
It hasn't fallen.
Good.
Just can blink them back.
But yeah. So what would you want to leave with in this last thing as we wrap up? What would you want to say to anybody watching if you had a megaphone to this world? What would you want to say to someone listening to you right now?
I would say it's all right. It's going to be all right. Go ahead and try. Always lead with gratitude. Nothing's eternal but people, so nothing matters more. And you're a people, so you matter too. And it's not too late. Not too late. Yeah.
It's not too late.
Not too late. All right.
It's definitely not too late.
What do we have here, Aaron?
So today on Tales from the Shaker, what do we have? Because I don't even remember. It's a mocktail, though.
It's a mocktail. We have a ginger mojito mocktail that Aaron muddled.
Fresh up ginger, the whole nine. I got some people here that said that I can't, whip up in the kitchen. I did my thing in the kitchen a little bit. Yeah. This is one of the first fruits of many. But Davia, thank you for the privilege and honor. Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, this has been a Davia Williams Stevenson podcast with an Aaron Laroy takeover. Thank you so much for allowing me to do this. I hope I did you justice.
You did a great job. It was
fun. It's an honor. I cannot wait to see what the future holds. It's an honor. Y'all stay tuned. Talk to you soon. Peace.